Welcome to Ngozi Talk Shows. Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Challenges we have had to overcome in 2020.
Find your own voice.
The world has become united by the unseen, knowing there are no guarantees for tomorrow.
Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Let the world hear your voice and be filled with it.
For the day has come for you to be a great leader.
The time has come to break away from the pain, distraction, experience the unthinkable.
Find your own voice. Lead from within. Welcome to Ngozi Talk Shows, everyone. Over to you, Amanda. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
My name's Amanda Cottrell. I'm coming to you from Canada, and it's bright and early here. I am a teacher, an author, and an illustrator, and I help empower people find their own unique creative capacities within themselves and to find joy through those creative capacities. Caroline?
Yeah, it's good afternoon from London, UK, and thanks, Amanda. As the writing facilitator, what I do is I support soul-driven entrepreneurs in becoming more productive with their writing by connecting them with their deeper innate ability to write. But more importantly, they experience free-flowing writing. They experience an unlocking of the writer within and getting their book written, getting their story written, because you cannot publish what isn't written. And all of this has come about through my own journey of unlocking the writer within. So I'm Carol Ann, the writing facilitator. Welcome you here today to this topic. So
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Carol Ann. So our topic today is how do you start a conversation? And what are startup conversations? Basically, how do you start a conversation after someone maybe? And how do you start that small talk? And basically, for you, when you meet people, you have to know how to keep the conversation going. So I'm going to because Carol Ann chose this topic, so I'm going to let her talk a little bit about the topic, why she chose the topic, and over to you, Carol Ann, please.
Thank you. Yes, I saw it and I just thought, oh, that'll be an interesting one again to explore, because how to start up a conversation, what is it you say, was always something that was something that eluded me when I was growing up. I always used to watch people talking, whether in pairs or in groups, and I'd be sort of thinking, how do they know what to say? You know, it's like I had no idea. It's like, how do they know what to say, what to talk about? Because I just didn't have a clue. And so it's always something that has held me back over the years, and it's something I've got easier at and just happier to sort of be and listen to conversation and then just join in naturally, just something that happens. But I thought, oh, this would be a great one to explore, and having looked it up and just see what other people have written about it, I'm going, wow, I had no idea. You know, it could be quite complex. There's a lot written about it, different topics, different types of conversations. And so maybe this is something that would be great to explore more for, you know, when we're growing up, something to explore when at school, you're sitting down having conversations. What are types of conversations you could have? What is a great way to start a conversation, depending on the setting that you're in, you know, because depending what setting you're in, it's a different conversation altogether. So you'd start with something different. So just for example, If you're just at a party with friends, you could, or just someone that you could just be asking people, well, is there anyone here? What brought you here? Or do you know the person that's running the party? Or, but more sort of open-ended questions rather than the closed yes, no answer type. And, what brought you here tonight? Or things like that. And I'm thinking, well, that's something I do now more. So it got me thinking. So yes, I thought it was just something great to explore, and there's something here for me to learn a lot more about. So what are your thoughts, Amanda? How's
Well, as
this
an
with you?
introvert, I always have trouble having discussions in big groups. So I think that's something that's really important, especially for people who are more introverted, is to explore some ways that they can maybe get themselves out of their shell a little bit. I know one thing that I do in my classroom when school's first starting up is I purposely hand out materials with their names on it to the wrong people. And then I ask the kids to go and find the person in the class whose name they have, and then they have to ask the person a question. And so maybe I make the question up, or I ask the class what question we have to ask. So maybe it's like, what did you do over the summer? Or what's your favorite animal? Or your favorite color? Or whatever. But I purposely, and I do it a bunch throughout the year, and sometimes even at the start of the year I do it like quite a few times, so that they're at least talking to like 5 different people in the classroom within the first day. And it's a way that they like have to search for whose material they have, and that way they're talking to 2 people, because they're not only talking to the person whose material they have, they're also talking to the person who has their piece of material. So whether it's a pencil sharpener or glue stick, whatever it is. And then I purposely in the classroom too will not let them always choose who their groups are. I have random sticks, so I pull their random sticks, and that's who's in their group. So I pull 4 sticks, and who's ever name's on it, you 4 are in a group, you 4 are in a group, you 4 are in a group. Or I'll even do it with 2s and 3s, just to get the kids. And the purpose is to get them to be able to work with different people and to talk to different people and to have those skills, so that when they are an adult, they're able to have conversations with and feel comfortable in different situations. And I think that's something really important that sometimes we don't think about, is it's something that you can even teach how to by doing fun games. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from it, because I am one of those people that will just stand in the corner and not talk to anyone. I know my one friend always bugs me that we like knew each other for like 2 years at yoga before we ever started talking. And I'm like, it's totally because of me, because I don't talk to any people at yoga. I just go to yoga and come home. And most of the friends that I've met through yoga, all I had met because of family yoga. And it's because in family yoga, you're actually talking and interacting with people, whereas in normal yoga, it's more silent. And yeah, so I find too that sometimes maybe you just project this like unapproachability, even though I am approachable. I just sometimes maybe project that unknowingly from being an introverted person.
I like what you just said there, actually, because that's something to think about. People don't realise that maybe there is that projection of being unapproachable, because there's part of you going, do I really want to talk here? And that energy is felt. And I totally understand where you're at. I'm one who's quite happy just to sit and observe and listen. And but I also love what you were saying about with your pupils. You're getting them to find whose item that they've got or who's got theirs, and that's promoting that, finding out each other's names, getting that conversation started, and sort of following up from there, because I know when we've done similar things in terms of when I've been at personal development events, and they said, go and talk to was it 5 people, find out about them, or it's just one person, I can feel myself curling up inside. It's like my stomach goes, "Ugh." And I think there's something there to take that activity a step further. Because is there anybody that's feeling that bit of a knot inside about going and talking to others, finding out about them, opening up that conversation? Because it's then exploring at that deeper level and actually acknowledging that it's okay to feel that knot of anxiety or apprehension or whatever the word is for you. Find a word that describes it. And then question, well, what is it that this anxiety is about? What is it you're apprehensive about? What are the thoughts that are going on in your head? What are your concerns? And start to get to understand yourself a lot more. So I think there's something else, that could be taken on and explored there, about how did you feel about that activity. And I know it's something that there's a bell. It's time for me to explore. I think there's someone wants to come in, wants acknowledging, and I think maybe there's a part of me that is wanting to know this a bit more. So yeah, what do you think about it? Perhaps exploring that a bit more. Nomsa, what are your thoughts on all of this? You're muted.
I actually agree with you, Carol Ann, when you say before you find it hard to actually start a conversation. But for me, when I go into personal development, I actually, because the United Kingdom, I was never born here. So I actually went to college and took some lessons basically to understand how to communicate, start a conversation and stuff. But before that, I find it really, really hard to start a conversation with people because most of the time I thought it was me, but now I'm into personal development. I'm starting to realize that actually people love to talk about themselves a lot. And it is hard. Sometimes I have to break the conversation for me to come in and ask questions. Sometimes you find that there's 4 people together, but there's only 2 people who are going on and on and on and on talking, and then you can't get a word in that conversation. At first, I thought it was me, but then now I'm starting to realize that that's actually some people, they don't know how to accommodate other people and to bring everybody in and make everyone feel like they are part of the conversation. Because before I started, when I went to college, I've learned that when you're approaching people, you have to first introduce yourself to someone, try to find out the things, whether you have somebody, obviously somebody, if they don't have children, what do they do for work or where do they live? And try to find a conversation to keep the conversation flowing in that part where they live, the area, how is it like, the culture. Like myself, I wasn't born in the UK. Let them ask questions if they have kids. Try to find out about their if they have children. Try to find out the ages of their children, and try to listen as well, like you were saying, or observe as well. Try to observe the conversation and listen when somebody, like if somebody says, I have my children, they're this age, do they go to school? Just keep the conversation going. It's like here with the parents, sometimes I go to pick up my daughter. Sometimes you find the parents, they are all in the group, but there is no room for you to speak. Because at first I thought it was me, I'm just being quiet and stuff, but now I'm just going, it's the conversation. These people don't know how to accommodate the conversation, like the situation where I was in before. I wouldn't know. Like sometimes if I'm talking to somebody, let's say, and then if there is two people, if I'm talking to the one person and I see someone is struggling to communicate with us, I have to try and ask questions, like a funny question, and say, oh, talk about what they're wearing, like, oh, I like your top. Where did you buy it? Is it from the UK or did you buy outside the country? Just try to bring somebody in to say it's okay to mingle, because sometimes some people can feel intimidated. So it's like it's okay just to bring somebody in and ask the information that is relevant to that person and pay compliment when is needed. So that's what I do. But when you say sometimes you feel like sometimes it's not the people, that is the people that I've realized that even though there are some people from this country, because my ex did say to me, like teaching me when I was going to college, he was helping me how to actually communicate with people, trying to get to know people as well and properly. And I basically went to college and did the exams. Basically, and I was like, I can't believe that I'm doing this. But it has helped me, because honestly, if you have not tried to actually observe it, if you go out now, you will see that there's people that are those who are into business, they'll figure it out. Who are into personal development, they figure it out. They will try to accommodate you, but some still they won't. They will talk about themselves, what they do. Conversation goes on and on until you move on. You feel like I'm not wanted. Here you go, but it's just that's how they are.
And I think that's what you've hit the nail on the head there. It's accepting that that's how it is. It's not actually
Yeah.
anything to do with you.
No.
It's nothing personal. It's just how they are. And they don't have that skill, because what you were saying, looking at other people and including them in the conversation, it's like they hold on to the conversation. And it is hard to get in there. And yes, and I think sometimes the best thing is just smile, walk away, or just listen. It depends what you feel comfortable with. But sometimes it can become quite uncomfortable when you're sort of stood there and someone is just talking and talking and talking. And you're sort of thinking, where can I get in? And yeah, it's
I definitely think there's another side of the conversation too, where there's people who are uncomfortable in silence or uncomfortable just listening and not talking. And I think there's something so important in just sitting and listening. Because people who are constantly talking aren't learning anything from anybody else. And so I really think that it's important too for us to recognize that while, say, like from an introvert's perspective, it may be really hard to speak up and to talk in a group. I find it much easier to talk to like one or two people rather than like a big group at a party, because that's the type of introvert that I am. But I can hold conversations for hours with just one or two people. But in a big group, I just would rather stand in the corner. But I also think too, there's people who feel more alive by those bigger groups of people, and but too, they sometimes don't necessarily listen. They just are constantly talking and talking and talking, because they get anxious the opposite. When they're not talking, they start to get anxious. Whereas someone who's introverted gets more anxious when they have to put themselves out there, and it's sometimes the opposite for people, and to recognize that both sides have strengths. So that maybe the extrovert has strengths in being able to start up conversations and be the life of the party, but may not be able to hold those friendships or have actually meaningful conversations, whereas the introvert has trouble starting up a conversation, but may have a lot more intimate, meaningful conversations throughout their lifetime. And so there's that balance, right, between the two. And I think that that's something just to be conscious of. Not even, and to see if you can just recognize that in people the next time you go to an event where you can like pick out, oh yeah, those are the talkers, those are the introverts, and see who you have the more like intellectual conversation with, and deeper conversation with, and who you have a more surface level conversation with. And for me personally, I'd rather have deeper conversations with fewer people than surface conversations with a lot of people. And that's just the type of person that I am. So yeah, I think that's something just to consider, because I think there's two sides to that as well.
I think that's a great consideration, actually, because yeah, some people they're uncomfortable with the silence, and it's like they have to fill it, and it's like they get to a point where they're not comfortable with just that pause to allow for things to be digested, and then for another part of the conversation to just take place. And there is something about being comfortable with silence, and I know it's something I've become much more comfortable with, even just when I'm talking with one person. It's just being in silence. And even when I'm on the phone to somebody, just being in silence for a while, just holding that space, it can have a really powerful effect. But it does take some just getting used to, and recognizing where you're talking because you want to fill the silence, or because there is something that actually arises that is there to be said, and then adds to whatever is being talked about, or what needs to be talked about next. And again, that is something that is quite a skill to have. But I so get what you're saying, Amanda, about being more comfortable with just one or two people to talk to and have that deeper conversation, because I find just that inane chatter across what I feel is it's just chatter. But some people just feel that, and I get that it's just a social conversation, and that's what they enjoy. And I think, as you were saying, it is recognizing that without making it wrong. And I realize that at times I've made it wrong, so I will listen to myself when I start making it wrong and go, okay, and recognizing, okay, this is not my conversation. It's not a conversation I want to take part in, and be happy to just walk away and find a conversation that, I do want to. So there is a loop that you can do, which is inclusive, which I like, which is about actually asking someone a question. And as Nomsa, you were saying, you just follow up with another, they answer, and then you follow up with another question. So you actually deepen your inquiry and your understanding of what they're talking about. But then you relate something back to them. You share a little bit about yourself that relates to what they're saying. And then you go back and ask another question about them. So there's this loop, and it opens up that conversation, but you include them, you include you, but you're not overpowering it. You're not putting your whole self in there the whole time. You're getting more from them. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. So you're getting more from them, and then just adding a little bit for yourself. And I love that. And I saw that loop. I thought, well, that's a nice way of putting it, and something worth thinking about. So again, if you're not sure about conversation, and is it okay for me to talk about myself, then yes, it is, because, people do want to know about you, but mostly people like to talk about themselves. So ask, more diving questions to find out more about what they're saying. But also recognize when maybe there's a childhood memory pops in about it popped in my head just now and then it's gone again, but it's something about not being nosy, not being too inquisitive. You shouldn't pester people, things like that I've been told as a child. You don't pester people, you're not nosy. It's nosy to inquire too much. Well, actually, what I found is quite the opposite. If people do like to share, and if they're not ready, they'll say so. And then you can just be comfortable with going, okay, that's fair enough. So again, recognize the childhood things that you've been told that are stopping you from maybe asking questions, that are maybe stopping you from moving forward with a conversation, or even sharing about yourself. Maybe you're told, no one wants to know about you. Little throwaway comments like that. Sometimes with a child, it sticks. And it sticks all the time. It's really powerful and has a power on you. So again, it's recognizing those things that hold you back, that stop you moving forward. And just that loop is perfect. I think it's beautiful. So yeah. There's another bell again. Someone wanted to come into the conversation. So who'd like to add something in here now? Nancy, you're muted. Are you talking?
Yeah, I love it, Carol Ann, when you talk about the childhood, like don't be nosy. My grandmother used to put it on the other way around. She used to say, when people speak, just listen, but make sure that you don't take it further because they might not want you to share it with somebody else. So I realize that's what I do, honestly. If somebody shares something with me, or I hear it, or I hear people talk, I basically cannot. Although I have spoken to psychologists and stuff about my childhood, but this is something that I cannot share anything that I have had from somebody to somebody else, because that's what my grandmother used to preach. She used to say, when you are in a conversation with someone, just listen to them, or if people are talking, just listen, but make sure you don't share it with somebody else, because that person might get hurt if they hear that you've shared their information that was meant to be heard by you with somebody else. So I don't share. If somebody comes to me and say, oh, I hear you were talking, I'm like, go and ask them. Or if somebody asks and say, I'm like, go ask the information with them. So that is very, very important. But sometimes when you are being told you're nosy from your childhood, like Carol Ann, like what you were saying, that you need to check out the memories from your childhood. That can play a very, very important part in your life. Because for me, in my childhood, basically, I used to listen to be really nosy. I'll go and listen to parents. Honestly, I'll listen to parents when they are busy talking. I'll just listen to them. And even now, this is what I do. Amanda was saying, and Carol Anna, you said some conversations, sometimes you can evaluate a conversation and see whether you fit in. There are lots of conversation where I go in and I listen and I'm like, this is not for me. And then I have to step back. I have to stay silent and step back, because I know that I don't fit in with that conversation. And Amanda, you were talking about the crowd. Me, I love the crowd. And not to talk, silence. Like Carol Anna was saying, I love to be silenced when it comes to the crowd. I basically take information, because I find that when people are in a crowd, that's when they will talk about valuable information. And sometimes they'll be talking about, oh, you can find this and there, this and that. I'm busy writing down the information. If I can't get it, hear it, I have to stop the whole conversation for me to take that information and write it down. But sometimes it's just nice when what Carol Anna was saying, and Amanda, you talk about it, that you don't feel comfortable in the crowd. Sometimes it's just nice to just sit there and listen, let people talk. I love that. I just let people talk. And even if they are doing something, but there's one thing that I can't get involved. I can't get involved with the gossip. I have to remove myself straight away. It's something that I was raised by my parents to do, that when you hear parents or when anyone gossip, just remove yourself. So I can't get involved in those kind of conversation. I have to remove myself. Even family members, when they're talking about other family member, I cannot, is something that is within me. I can't comment, basically, because I find that I don't know. I don't feel comfortable. Even like my siblings, when they are together, when we are together, we don't talk about each other. I'm not used to it. But here, sometimes you'll find it that siblings against siblings, they'll be talking about each other. So I just feel uncomfortable, and then I remove myself, because for me, I don't feel, I love and protect my own blood. And even my friends, like in gossip talk shows, like the speakers, I love and protect. So I just have to remove myself. So it depends with the where the conversation is going, whether is that conversation is serving you as well. And that's when it comes to pick and choose who you hang out with, basically. And Amanda, you was talking about you rather have fewer people. I don't mind having crowd. I don't mind having fewer people, but the conversation, it has to make sense. And Carol Ann, you talk about you talk about sometimes being silent is the best way. Sometimes I agree with you 1000%. Sometimes I basically, I like being silenced. Sometimes the people can't figure me out. Honestly, sometimes the people cannot figure me out because I don't talk much. Honestly, even with the Martinez family, I don't talk much. People can't figure me out. If I see that people are talking too much, I just ask them questions about their lives, and then I zip it. And when I'm start doing things and they're like, "We didn't know you could do this," I'm like, "You've never asked." Yeah, because people love to talk about themselves. So sometimes being silent, when I speak, is either I like giving out information that I know, if I come across with information that is useful for people, I like giving out that information. But in general, I think I'm not quiet. I'm nosy, packer, curious person that goes silence, but it taking it all in.
As you were talking, I was thinking about in Canada this week, we have our first National Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is about the country learning about the atrocities that happen with the First Nations people and our government. And one of the things that I was teaching my students about was one of the First Nations teachings about the importance and the value of a circle, and why we sit in a circle and why we have discussions in a circle. And so the purpose of the circle is so that nobody is like the leader, everyone is equal in the circle. And two, to set it up so that only one person is talking at a time so that everyone else has the chance to like share and listen. And so we learned the importance of what they call the talking stick as well. And the talking stick you pass around the circle, and only the person who has the stick is allowed to talk at that particular time. And circles are meant for having like debates or discussions or just talking about our feelings, or our ability to solve a problem can be used when you have that special designated circle time. And so what I found so valuable in the teachings was that importance, and it talked with the kids too about the importance of listening to others, and that even if it's not your time to share, it's your time to listen. When you're in that specific like sharing circle time, is that you have your chance to talk, but you also have your time to listen where you're showing respect to others. And I think that's something that's really important to teach children as well, is that maybe what somebody else has to say has a lot of value to it. And I just thought that was so important. And we're actually, like, because I'm so artsy, we're making talking sticks in my classroom. Like, we're going to design these like fun talking sticks, and because of COVID, instead of passing the stick around the circle, we're each going to have our own and just hold it up when it's our turn to talk, set it down to show that we're ready to pass on to the next person. And I think that just learning different different values from different cultures, I think, is something really important too, because I think different cultures really value different aspects when it comes to communication. And one of the things I've learned from the First Nations traditions is, like, as I continue to research and dive into more and more learning in this area, is that they really valued listening to each other. And I think that's something that maybe sometimes Western society doesn't value as much. Maybe especially seeing that right now in our country, where in Canada anyways, where people aren't listening to each other. They just have one extreme view or the other extreme view, and there's no middle ground when it comes to what's going on with the COVID pandemic here. And so I find that really interesting, that people are so divided, and that there's no middle ground. And I think if we really truly listened and had an open public debate on the topic, that we would find a middle ground, and it wouldn't be so scary. And yet there's no middle ground right now. And that's the part that I find really scary, is that people aren't listening to each other. Even scientists aren't listening to each other. And that part I find very, very scary. They're just dismissing anyone who doesn't agree with their value, with their views and what their science has said. And I think that's something that's really scary, is because science is about a conversation. It's about continuing to ask questions. It's about continuing to explore. And if we stop exploring and stop asking those questions, then really our science comes to a dead end, and our exploration of the universe comes to a dead end in so many ways, if we don't continuously ask questions and continuously seek to understand. And one thing about empathy is understanding both sides, and I'm a huge advocate for empathy, is being the ability for people to take a step back, try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and empathize with what they may be going through, even though you haven't gone through it. And I think that on the pandemic, both sides have very valid concerns, and that we don't really have an answer, and that you have to have empathy for people who are on both sides of the spectrum, and people who are trying to find a middle ground. And yeah, so anyways, I think that's something really important, is our ability to listen to each other, because and especially in Canada, the media is being silenced on one end of the spectrum, and we're only hearing one other end. And I'd really like to be able to hear both sides in an open public debate.
I think that's the important thing, isn't it? It's being able to hear both sides and be able to hear all aspects. Because right now I think it's got to a point where we're sort of thinking, well, what actually is the truth here? Because you don't know what to believe. You hear things and you hear something else, and then and you're constantly fed a particular angle, and everybody's shut down. And because there's so much fear, they can't listen. They don't have access to language, to the language center in their brain, because they're shut down in the reptilian brain in fear, and there is no access to language or being able to listen. And so it's really being able to reduce that fear, let go of that fear, and be able to become into the moment. Because fear is only projection into the future. It's a fear of what's already happened. It's, you're not here in the moment. So to really get that middle ground, we all need to be here in the moment, willing to listen. And I love what you said about science is an exploration of questions. And I thought, well, yes, that's what scientists are about. Scientists are about actually criticizing one another and picking up the mantle and running with it and asking more questions and going with that. And where's that gone? That seems to have have gone out the window. We don't seem to have that open discussion. It's not there. It's a case of this is it and that's it. They're not willing to look at anything else. And that's from my perspective, and that's how it seems to me, which really, yes, does not, that isn't the true nature of what scientists and science is about. So I think that's something really important to emphasize there, what you were saying, Amanda, because that is so true. And so really, if people really got the sense of what science is about, everybody would be allowed to have their voice, would be allowed to have their opinion. But the trouble is, people are getting shot down, and it's become very divisive, and that's actually what I feel. There's a fear inside me because that's what's happening, but also there's a concern and anxiety, which I sort of keep working on, because that doesn't help either. It's like, if I'm fearing it and I'm focusing on it, then that's what will be here. I need to be able to let that go and focus on something greater coming out of this. Something where someone is listened to. Reason is being able to be listened to. Questions are allowed to be asked and answered truthfully, or explored or discussed, and people are allowed their own opinion, and not accused of being one thing or the other, and not being allowed to speak out. So yeah, I think there's some greater debates there to come out, and listening is key, very much so. And I love what you're saying about the stick, handing that round. I remember doing that in circles before, and it really does get you to focus. And then when it's passed on, it's like, okay, that person's talking, and that is again a great activity to do. But something you were saying about walking in someone else's shoes, really getting to understand them. If you can't listen to them, there's a great activity I once did at an event I went to many years ago, and I just remembered it. And what we did, we're in pairs. We literally shadowed the other person and literally walked in their shoes. So because however they appeared to be walking, we walked the same way. We held our body in the same way. We took the same pace as them. And you really got a deeper sense of what was going on for them. And I remember the person that shadowed me, he went, wow, he really got the pain that my body was in at that time and the struggle that I was having to walk. Because just talking about it, he couldn't get it. But by physically experiencing it, he got it. So maybe there's something there to think about, physically stepping in someone else's shoes and just shadowing and how they're walking, and just feel it in your body. Because that's another way of listening. Our body can listen. We just don't have ears to listen with. We've got a body which can experience and listen as well. So yeah, thank you for bringing that memory back, because it's like, that was a really powerful exercise that we did. Really powerful. So yeah, have you experienced anything like that, or done any activities that's helped you step in other people's shoes? Nomsa, Amanda, either of you?
Me, I don't step into somebody else's shoes. And the reason why I don't do that, maybe if it was 10 years ago, I would do it. But now I just have, because I've meditated so much and I pray so much. So at the moment I basically try to listen to somebody and see what they're going through. I know I can never feel their pain, regardless of how much I try, but all I can do, I can sit there. I have a different mindset than I used to have. Like Amanda, when she's talking about the pandemic, that there should be a public debate. It will never happen because pandemic is a spiritual attack, and it meant to divide people. Then it's up to people to actually realize the truth. Because for me, I believe that the coronavirus treatment could be something that very easy that you could get behind the counter. That's how I believe it. But I don't believe spending thousands and thousands of billions and billions of dollars is the solution. I don't believe that. I just feel that when you read the Bible, the economy is being attacked, and the people on earth, basically, we are being attacked. But then it's up to us to actually and to actually listen. Because if I look at on WhatsApp, I get shared videos of people trying to basically wanting the scientist to listen. They're saying, I've done this, I've treated my patient with this, and they're all coming out with the same thing. And they're different people living in different countries, and they're all saying they've tried medication behind the counter and it worked. So, because of the attack, if it is a spiritual attack, there will be a division. It's basically somebody trying to pull somebody out there so that there's no unity. But then it will be up to the world to actually pray for each other and basically come together as one and just see basically what is happening. Are we actually solving problems by spending these billions and billions of dollars, thousands of dollars, billions? Or are we just basically running down the economy? Like right now, UK, I was telling you, Carol, Anne, the other day about shopping. I went to buying meat. There was no meat in the shops. And I didn't know there was no meat. I just assumed that, oh, okay, because I don't listen to the news until somebody mentioned that, yeah, there's a problem with the meat. And now it's the petrol. So it's just coming together as one and seeing what is working, what is not working. And like Carol Anne, you were saying, the solution, you guys had to walk in somebody else's shoes. You can either do that, walking in someone else's shoes, so you can feel what they are feeling, and then you make a decision. At that moment, the conversation has to flow based on giving somebody a chance. But for me, I've learned to train my mind that when I'm with somebody, I have to listen to what they're saying. What are they telling me? And not acting on a selfishness place. I have to basically ask, if it was me going through this, what would I want this person to do? I want them to listen. I want them to comfort. I want them to have a conversation with me. So that's what I do. Is something that I train myself by reading the Bible. So Amanda, you guys are gonna have to pray for your country, because unfortunately you guys are fighting the unseen fight that it basically it's basically, I don't know how it ends. We don't know the ending of this. Honestly, we don't know the ending. I'm not looking forward to winter this year, because I have a feeling that we might be put back to lockdown, because there are some people that are in the government and they're saying we might go back to lockdown if the virus goes up. But I'm hoping that the ending will work on our favor, because if you look at this pandemic, this it's like my mom had the virus a few weeks ago and she had the vaccine, but she had it really bad, but then she recovered. And the recovering was weird. Like 1 minute she's really sick, and the next minute like nothing has ever happened. So it was like, honestly, nothing. Like we're worried sick about her, and she's really, really sick. And then in the next thing, she just recovered very quickly, like nothing has ever happened. So we don't know the ending of this, and it's just hopefully one day there'll be unity. But the scientists, they are not united. I agree with you on that one, Amanda. They're not united at all. It's just a separation.
Yeah, I think that it's really hard when there's such opposing views and they're not allowing them to have an open public debate on it, or that in Canada anyways, we're only hearing one side, and it's like underground news that's only like reporting the other side, and it's really hard to understand what's truly going on. Um, what concerns me the most is the rights that are being taken away from people. That like the Nuremberg Code, all of those, like we have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms and all of those things, and we're not listening to what, or looking back on history. I feel like history is repeating itself in so many ways where we're not truly understanding how our behavior is affecting society. And I really think we're going to look back on this point in history and be really disappointed by our behaviors. Because when I look back on the atrocities that have happened throughout time, I'm appalled by how people have treated each other, and I'm appalled by how people are treating each other throughout this pandemic as well. One thing I think that's really important too, as we were talking, and I know I mentioned, because I keep learning about the First Nations stuff in Canada, there's also like other cultures and stuff who've had beliefs and belief systems, and even meditation is something that science is only now being able to understand and prove that meditation actually really truly does help you. And they're able to show the science behind it now, to like how many thousands of years have people been meditating for, especially coming from India and in Buddhism, and only now are we being able to scientifically prove that meditation actually helps people's brains. And even like your aura, they're being able to start proving some of the things that mediums and psychics and all of that were spouting off years ago, and only now are they able to is science starting to be able to understand some of that phenomenon. And I don't, whether you believe in that or not, I just find it very, very interesting that science is starting to prove some of the things that um, different groups of people have known for thousands of years. So about meditation, about spiritualism, about so many different things where people were just like not listening to each other, about the energy that comes from plants and animals, and all of that, where science is starting to prove that those things actually do exist, and that all living things give off energy and I forget what it's called. But
Electromagnetic.
yeah, they
Yeah.
have all their own unique electromagnetic fields, and they give off different ions at different times, and it's just so fascinating when you begin to learn, and you're questioning people, and questioning what you truly believe. I think that's something that's really important to consider, and that, well, when you're having conversations, are you closed-minded or are you open-minded? Are you able to ask questions? Are you able to critically think about your belief system? Are you able to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, or oh yeah, maybe science can prove something in a different way that we never truly understood before? And I think that when we're continuously questioning, continuously looking at our belief system and adjusting it as we learn, that's really, really empowering. Whereas if you have a closed mindset and you're just like, nope, it's this way no matter what, that's when we really get into trouble. And when we're open, and we're open to considering both sides, and we're opening to consider how you're looking at a specific topic and questioning it, and are able to debate something in a respectful way to each other. And that's the part that I'm finding the most difficult right now, is people aren't debating in a respectful way. They're only debating in a degrading, inappropriate and mean way that I find really, really sad right now for our communication system, and for our ability to explore and to question and to truly listen to each other, because you can't truly listen when you're just automatically shut down.
And that's what you're saying about, I love it, is that conversation can go all over the place. And it is about not having that fixed mind of where it's going to go. And so, like, we started up with the question, how do you start up a conversation? And I think there's something about being happy for a conversation to start up, or start a conversation, and then allow it to take its own course, and for people to add in, and then it to take off somewhere else, because sometimes we're so fixed on, well, no, this is what we're talking about. That's the only thing we can talk about. But if you allow a conversation to start, then it's in the listening that you can then, it's that dancing in the conversation. I just love that phrase. So it is in the listening, and then the debating, and allowing someone to have their say, their point of view, but allowing yourself to have your own point of view without putting the other person down or making them wrong. It's going, there's ways of being able to say that. But I think what you're saying about a debate, it's not an argument, it's a conversation, it's a debate. And it's allowing both sides to have their say, but then allowing a conversation to just, okay, it's going to go off this way. That's okay. And you can go with it if you wish to, or you can choose, okay, I'm not in this conversation anymore, and go somewhere else. It's being allowed to allow yourself that freedom to do that and acknowledge what works best for you. That, it's get rid of that fixed mindset, that fixed way of thinking. And the quote that I use a lot is, parachutes. No, your minds are like parachutes. They work best when they're open. And I just love that quote. So just remember that. And ask yourself, do you have a closed mindset, or are you open-minded? Doesn't mean that you have to follow the sheep and go with them. That's not what open-mindedness is about. It's about listening and making up your own mind. But you're listening. You're open-minded to it. And you can take it or leave it. Yeah. So that's something that just came to me as we were talking, which for me is like, oh, that's something it's just come to mind, and I've learnt out of listening to this conversation. And I think it was something, if you're not listening, you're not learning. There's always something you can learn from a conversation. And it's lovely. So love it.
I think Amanda has to go to work now. I agree with you, Amanda. I'm sure the scientists will actually come to unity one day, but all the clairvoyants and psychics, it does exist. They all have their energy that they use, and it does exist. I don't believe in them, but I know it does exist because I actually I did work on the energy, like trying to figure out who is who, what do they do and stuff. They do exist. And sometimes the science, they like to, because you have to understand as well, it's all about making money as well. Somebody has to win. Somebody has to gain out of this pandemic as well. Somebody wants some dosh through pandemic. So you got to understand. So we are here to Gossip Talk Show. You've given me an idea, actually, Amanda. I think we're going to have a debate one day, a night of debate, talking about the views about this pandemic and the science and stuff. So
yeah, I think that would be really valuable, is just to try to look at and just to have empathy for both sides. I think that's so important. I'll leave you with, though, the value of conversation is really important, but you need to have an open mind to both sides. And also, if you're an introvert like me, recognize that it's okay to just sit back and listen. And if you're an extrovert, maybe sometimes it is time to listen. But also, us introverts can learn how to be can learn from the extroverts too, and to gain some self-confidence to put ourselves out there in more social settings. And so I'll leave you with that for today.
It's just something
Thank
I
you so
just like
much.
to leave it, bring in as a thought. I read today was actually, if you're really keen and you want to understand how to start conversations, there's 3 things here. Actually commit to reading some books on how to start a conversation. Actually learn from people who are actually socially savvy, and spend time socializing. So there's 3 things that you could actually do. And I saw that there's a great list on, there's this guy, David A. Morin, on socialpronow.com, and he's got 14 best books on how to make conversation with anyone. And he's ranked them and reviewed them. And I had a quick look at some of them, and I'm thinking, wow, I had no idea there's all these books that you could read. And there's some that are more advanced. So you could, if you're, there's sort of like beginner ones, and then there's, say, the more advanced ones. So do take that on, that's something to look at. Start reading up and commit to read some books on it, and improve just that ability to start up a conversation. And I go back to have fun with it, as I always say.
Would you like to put the names of the books or whatever the writer on the link, Carol Ann, as a comment when you have time, please?
Yes, will do.
Comment, yes. That would be lovely. That would be helpful for me as well. Go and have a look at how the conversation. I love to learn, keep learning. And thank you so much, everyone. We are here Monday to Friday at Ngozi Talk Shows. And please, if you're watching this later, press some heart button and share some love with your friends and your loved ones. Live with grace, and God bless you.